First Contact's Folly. High Admiral Thexlar of the Valkyran Empire stood before the massive quantum display, his iridescent scales shifting from deep purple to midnight blue as he processed the sensor readings. The primitive vessels approaching his fleet barely registered on their advanced detection systems, crude metal constructions propelled by chemical reactions and nuclear fission. Behind him, the bridge crew of the dreadnought Eternal Dawn maintained their positions with characteristic Valkyran discipline, though he could sense their collective disdain. High Admiral, his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Velura, spoke with carefully measured words. The species designates themselves as humans. They appear to have achieved spaceflight barely 2 centuries ago. Their vessels show no signs of quantum shielding, no dark matter drives, not even basic gravitic manipulation. Thexlar's upper lip curled slightly, revealing a row of crystalline teeth. And yet they dare approach a Valkyran battle group. Fascinating. He turned to face his tactical officer. Analysis of their defensive capabilities. Minimal, High Admiral. Their hulls are primarily composed of titanium alloys and carbon composites. Their weapons appear to be. The tactical officer paused, double-checking his readings. Kinetic rail systems and chemical-propelled missiles. They would barely scratch our outer shields. The bridge fell silent as 3 human vessels continued their approach. They were dwarfed by the Valkyran ships, appearing like insects before giants. The Valkyran Empire had encountered many species during their 1,000-year expansion, but none had seemed quite so inadequate. Open communications, Thexlar commanded. Let us see what these creatures have to say for themselves. The quantum display shifted, revealing the human female in what appeared to be a formal military uniform. Her skin was a pale shade of pink, her hair dark and pulled back tightly. What struck Thexlar was her expression. Not fear, not awe, but something approaching casual interest. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Welcome to human space, High Admiral Thexlar. Thexlar's scales rippled in surprise. You know who I am. We make it our business to know, Chen replied with a slight smile. We've been observing your fleet since it entered the Oort cloud. Impressive ships you have. The casual way she delivered this information sent a slight chill down Thexlar's spine. Their sensors had detected nothing until these 3 ships appeared. He pushed the thought aside. Primitive beings using primitive technology. Nothing more. Captain Chen. He spoke with the authority of 10,000 years of Valkyran civilization behind him. Your species exists in a region of space claimed by the Valkyran Empire. We have come to formally incorporate your worlds into our domain. Resistance would be unfortunate. Chen's expression didn't change. I appreciate the offer, High Admiral, but I'm afraid we'll have to decline. Earth and her colonies are not interested in becoming part of your empire. A ripple of amusement passed through the bridge crew. Thexlar himself felt a mixture of pity and irritation. Captain, you seem to misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your defenses cannot stop us. We offer incorporation rather than annihilation out of mercy. I understand completely, High Admiral, Chen replied, her tone still conversational. But I think there's something you should know about humans. We've spent most of our history fighting each other. We've gotten very good at it. And the one thing that unites us faster than anything else is someone telling us we can't do something. Thexlar's scales darkened. Are you threatening us, Captain? Not at all, High Admiral. I'm simply explaining why we decline your generous offer. We're transmitting our formal response now. The tactical officer suddenly straightened. High Admiral. Energy spike from the human vessels. Thexlar turned just in time to see the 3 small ships disappear in a flash of light that definitely wasn't primitive chemical propulsion. At the same instant, every quantum sensor on his flagship went dark, along with half their secondary systems. Report, he barked. Some kind of electromagnetic pulse, but different, the tactical officer stammered. They've somehow coupled it with a quantum field disruption we've never seen before. Sensors are offline, quantum communications are down, and what? And they've left something behind. A small device, floating where their ships were. Thexlar stared at the simple metal sphere on the physical backup cameras. As he watched, it began broadcasting on all frequencies, using perfect Valkyrian language. Message begins. The species you know as humans formally declines integration into the Valkyrian Empire. We have demonstrated a small fraction of our actual capabilities. The next demonstration will be considerably less polite. We suggest you reconsider your position. Message ends. For the first time in his 300-year career, High Admiral Thexlar felt something he'd never experienced before: doubt. High Admiral, Veldra spoke quietly. Those weren't their warships, were they? Thexlar's scales had turned a pale gray. No, Sub-Commander. I believe we just met their diplomatic corps. He turned to his communications officer. Send a priority message to High Command. Tell them we may have made a significant tactical error. The small metal sphere continued to float in space, broadcasting its message on repeat, a simple but clear statement. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The silent strike. The Valkyrian War Council chamber pulsed with angry red light from the scales of 24 admirals and generals. High Admiral Thexlar stood at the center, his own scales a muted gray as he delivered his report. The humans have refused all subsequent communication attempts, he stated, each word carefully measured. However, they have taken no aggressive action since their demonstration. Supreme Commander Zextal, her scales rippling with barely contained rage, leaned forward. You mean since they humiliated our flagship and exposed weaknesses in our quantum defense systems that we didn't even know existed? Yes, Supreme Commander. And you still advocate for caution. They are primitives with a few clever tricks. Nothing more. Zextal's crystalline teeth gleamed in the chamber's harsh light. I have authorized the deployment of the 7th Battle Fleet. We will show these humans the true meaning of Valkyrian might. As if summoned by her words, a junior communications officer burst into the chamber, his scales flickering between white and gray. A sign of extreme distress. Supreme Commander, the 7th Fleet. It's gone. The chamber erupted in chaos. Zextal rose to her full height, towering over the messenger. Explain. They reached the human border as planned, but then, nothing. All communication ceased. We thought it was another quantum disruption, but our long-range scouts just returned. The fleet is physically gone. No debris, no energy signatures, no signs of battle. Just gone. Thexlar felt his scales turn even paler. How many ships? 317, High Admiral, including 6 dreadnoughts. The chamber fell silent. Zextal slowly sank back into her seat, her scales shifting to a deep, troubled purple. Impossible. No species could defeat such a force without leaving a trace. Unless, Thexlar ventured. That was exactly what they wanted to demonstrate. A new voice cut through the tension. Speaking of demonstrations, it was Fleet Intelligence Director Melrick, holding up a quantum pad. We've just lost contact with Forward Base Epsilon. But this time, they managed to transmit visual data first. The chamber's main display activated, showing the base's external cameras. For several moments, nothing seemed amiss. Then, one by one, the base's defense platforms simply disappeared. Not with explosions or visible weapons fire. They simply ceased to exist, replaced by empty space. The recording ended with a glimpse of something massive moving through the void, its outline suggesting a ship larger than anything in the Valkyrian fleet, before it too vanished. Stealth technology far beyond our capabilities, Melrick explained unnecessarily, and some form of matter dissolution weapon we can't even begin to understand. But here's the truly interesting part. Analysis suggests the energy signatures are consistent with human fusion technology. They're not using anything exotic or advanced. They've just perfected what we considered primitive. Impossible, one of the admirals sputtered. Their ships still use chemical propulsion. The ships they want us to see use chemical propulsion, Thexler corrected. We're dealing with a species that has mastered the art of deception. Everything they've shown us, everything they've hidden. It's all been deliberate. Supreme Commander Zextal's scales had shifted to the deep blue of tactical contemplation. They knew we were coming. They've known about us for longer than we realized. Those first ships, the ones you encountered, they weren't a diplomatic mission. They were an assessment team. And we failed the assessment, Melrick added quietly. The chamber's quantum sensors suddenly screamed to life. One by one, every admiral and general received the same message on their personal devices. It was text only, in perfect Valkyrian script. To the Valkyrian War Council, your 7th Fleet has been relocated, intact, to coordinates attached. All personnel are unharmed, but temporarily sedated. Consider this a second diplomatic overture. We possess the capability to eliminate your forces at will. We choose not to. Ask yourselves why. Office of Human Strategic Communications. Thexlar read the message 3 times before speaking. They want us to understand something. Something beyond mere military capability. They're showing restraint, Zextal realized, her scales shifting to a color none in the chamber had seen before. The pale yellow of fear mixed with fascination. They could have destroyed the fleet, but they chose to incapacitate and relocate it instead. Why? Because, Thexler said slowly, they're not just showing us their power, they're showing us their character. He looked around the chamber, meeting each council member's eyes. We assumed they were primitives because their visible technology was less advanced. But what if they chose a different path? What if they advanced not just their technology, but their understanding of when not to use it? The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was a silence of realization. The Valkyrian Empire had encountered many species in its long history. Some fought, some surrendered, some negotiated, but they had never encountered one that could so completely dominate them while simultaneously showing such restraint. Send a message, Zextal finally ordered, her scales settling into a calm blue. Tell them we're ready to talk. Really talk this time. As the command was relayed, another message appeared on their screens. We accept. Coordinates for a neutral meeting ground follow. And yes, we've been listening to your entire conversation. We look forward to more honest dialogue. Office of Human Strategic Communications. Thexlar felt his scales shift to a pattern he'd never experienced before. The complex swirl of humility and hope. Breaking point. The neutral meeting ground turned out to be an asteroid facility in unclaimed space, its existence previously unknown to the Valkyrian Empire. As High Admiral Thexlar's shuttle approached, he noted the seamless blend of function and aesthetics in its design. Curves and angles working together in a way that somehow seemed both natural and engineered. Remarkable, Sub-Commander Velra murmured beside him. No visible weapon systems, yet. Yet we both know it's far from defenseless, Thexlar finished. Their sensors detected nothing beyond basic life support and gravitational systems, but after recent events, they knew better than to trust such readings. The docking procedure was automatic, smooth, and completely unlike anything in Valkyrian technology. As they stepped into the station's main corridor, Thexlar noticed something odd. The environment was perfectly calibrated for Valkyrian comfort, from the gravity to the atmosphere composition. They were met by a single human, the same Captain Chen from their first encounter. She smiled, and Thexlar now recognized it as a gesture of peaceful intent rather than the sign of aggression his species initially assumed. "Welcome to Neutral Ground Station," she said, speaking perfect Valkyrian without any translation device visible. "I trust the journey was comfortable." Before Thexlar could respond, a deep rumble shook the station. Chen's smile disappeared as she pressed her hand to an earpiece that hadn't been visible a moment before. Well, she said, switching to a more formal tone, it seems some elements of your empire have decided to force the issue. The Ninth Battle Fleet just emerged from quantum space, accompanied by what I believe you call a planet breaker. Thexlar's scales flashed white with shock. Impossible. The Supreme Commander ordered. Your military hardliners staged a coup 4 hours ago, Chen interrupted calmly. They believe we're bluffing about our capabilities and think this station is our command center. She paused, head tilted slightly. They're charging their main weapons. Velra moved to a viewport, watching as space itself seemed to twist around the massive Valkyran vessels. Those are our most powerful ships, he said quietly. The planet breaker alone can reduce a world to atoms. Yes, Chen agreed. Under normal circumstances, that would be quite threatening. She made a small gesture, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed the Valkyran fleet in perfect detail, but also revealed something else. Dozens of points of light, barely visible, surrounding the fleet. What are those? Thexlar asked, though part of him already knew. Those, Chen explained, are human ships. They've been there since before your fleet arrived. Standard protocol. We maintain invisible defensive screens around all diplomatic installations. She sighed. I really hoped we wouldn't have to demonstrate this capability. The Valkyran planet breaker fired. A beam of energy that could shatter worlds lanced toward the station and vanished. Not blocked, not absorbed, simply ceased to exist. In the same instant, every ship in the Valkyran fleet lost power. We call it the Void Mirror, Chen said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. It doesn't just stop energy weapons, it removes them from existence. Rather wasteful, really, but effective. She made another gesture, and the hologram showed the Valkyran ships being enveloped in soft fields of light. Don't worry, your people are safe. We're using the same relocation technology we employed with your 7th Fleet. Thexlar watched in stunned silence as the mighty 9th Battle Fleet simply disappeared, transported to some unknown location. How? He began, then stopped, realizing he was asking the wrong question. Why? Why show such mercy when you could simply destroy us? Chen's expression softened. Because that's not who we are, Admiral. Or at least, not who we chose to become. She gestured for them to follow her into a conference room. Humanity's history is filled with war, yes. We became very good at it. But we also learned from it. Each conflict taught us not just how to fight better, but why we should avoid fighting when possible. The conference room's walls were lined with images, human history, Thexlar realized. Scenes of terrible wars and beautiful peace. We developed our technology along a different path than most species. Chen continued. We focused not on bigger weapons, but on perfect defenses. Not on destroying enemies, but on preventing them from destroying us or themselves. Every technology you've seen us use, the quantum disruption, the fleet relocation, the void mirror, they're all defensive in nature. But surely you have offensive capabilities, Velra interjected. Of course, but we chose to show you our defensive ones first. Tell me, Admiral Thexlar, what does that tell you about us? Thexlar felt his scales shift through several colors before settling on a deep, thoughtful blue. It tells us that you're secure enough in your power to not need to demonstrate it destructively, that you've reached a level of civilization where you can choose how to respond rather than simply reacting. He paused. It tells us that we've badly misjudged your species. Chen nodded. There's an old human saying, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. We took that to heart as we moved into space. We could have built weapons to shatter planets, like your planet breaker. Instead, we built technologies to prevent planets from being shattered. We could have designed ships to destroy fleets. Instead, we created ways to neutralize them without harm. She touched a control, and a new hologram appeared, Earth and its colonies, but now showing their true technological level. Thexlar's scales paled as he realized the scope of what humanity had achieved. Your hardliners will find themselves under medical observation in one of our facilities, Chen said. Once they've calmed down, they'll be returned, along with some data I think they'll find enlightening. She smiled again. We'd much rather have you as neighbors than enemies. The question is, what would you rather have? Thexlar looked at the human captain, really looked at her, and understood at last. Humanity hadn't just mastered advanced technology. They'd mastered themselves, and that, he realized, was far more impressive than any weapon could ever be. The tables turn. 3 months after the incident at Neutral Ground Station, High Admiral Thexlar stood before the reformed Valkyran High Council. The chamber, once decorated with trophies of military conquest, now displayed artifacts of cultural exchange. Most prominent among them was a simple glass sphere containing a perfect miniature of Earth, a gift from the Human Diplomatic Corps. The integration of human defensive technologies into our systems continues smoothly, Thexlar reported, his scales shimmering with the blue-green of progress. More significantly, their approach to technological development has changed our perspective. The new Supreme Administrator, Valsha, leaned forward. Unlike her militant predecessor, her scales constantly shifted through peaceful shades of blue and green. Explain further, Admiral. We've always measured advancement by destructive capability, Thexlar said, activating a holographic display. The humans measure it by protective capacity. Their entire technological philosophy is based on prevention rather than aggression. The display showed a Valkyran colony world, recently retrofitted with human-designed defensive systems. A small demonstration played out. A meteor shower, potentially devastating, simply disappeared before reaching the atmosphere. But it goes beyond mere defense, Thexlar continued. They've shown us that true power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice not to. He gestured, and the display shifted to show something that made several council members' scales flash white with astonishment. It was a recording from a human archive, their first successful test of antimatter containment, centuries ago. They had achieved the ultimate destructive capability, and immediately turned it toward energy production and defensive applications. Their history is fascinating, Thexlar explained. They developed in a way we never considered possible. While we focused on conquering space, they focused on understanding it. Where we built weapons to assert dominance, they built shields to preserve life. A new figure entered the chamber, Captain Chen, now serving as the official human ambassador to the Valkyran Empire. The council members rose in respect, a gesture that would have been unthinkable just months ago. Admiral Thexlar speaks truth, Chen said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. But there's something else you should know. She produced a small device, and the holographic display changed again. This is a live feed from the edge of explored space. The display showed something impossible, a massive tear in spacetime itself, with unknown entities emerging from it. We detected this anomaly 3 days ago, Chen continued calmly. Based on our analysis, these beings appear to be from another universe entirely. Their technology is aggressive. They've already destroyed several uninhabited systems in their path of emergence. The council erupted in concerned murmurs, scales flickering through colors of alarm. Valsha raised a hand for silence. Why are you showing us this? Chen smiled, that same confident smile Thexlar had first seen months ago. Because they're heading toward both our territories, and because we believe this is an opportunity. An opportunity? Someone questioned. Yes, Chen replied. An opportunity for our civilizations to work together. You see, while we've mastered defensive technologies, there are aspects of Valkyran military strategy that we find impressive. Your tactical coordination, your fleet movements, your understanding of quantum space dynamics. They're all superior to ours in many ways. Thexlar's scales shifted to a pattern of dawning understanding. You're suggesting an alliance. More than that, Chen said. I'm suggesting a partnership. Humanity's defensive capabilities combined with Valkyran tactical expertise. Your quantum understanding merged with our matter manipulation technology. Together, we could create something neither of us could achieve alone. The display shifted again, showing a simulation of combined human-Valkyrian technology. It was beautiful in its complexity. Valkyrian quantum drives enhanced by human stability fields, Valkyrian energy weapons modified with human precision targeting, and entirely new systems born from the merger of both civilizations' knowledge. The entities emerging from that rift will reach populated space in approximately 1 month, Chen continued. They don't respond to communication. They don't show any interest in diplomacy. For the first time in centuries, humanity faces an enemy that cannot be reasoned with, and for the first time, we're choosing to prepare for offense rather than just defense. Velsha stood, her scales now showing the deep purple of decisive action. What are you proposing, Ambassador? A joint defense force, not just sharing technology, but creating new technologies together. Your scientists working alongside ours, your ships fighting alongside ours. The Valkyrian Empire knows how to win wars. Humanity knows how to prevent them. Together, she let the thought hang. Vexlar completed it for her. Together, we could protect not just our own civilizations, but all civilizations in this region of space. Chen nodded. Exactly. The choice, as always, is yours. But remember, strength isn't just about having the biggest weapons. It's about knowing when to use them, when not to use them, and most importantly, who to share them with. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Valkyrian Empire, once convinced of its own superiority, was being offered a chance not to submit to human power, but to join it as equals, to transform from conquerors into protectors. Velsha rose to her full height, her scales settling into the gold of momentous decision. Ambassador Chen, I believe it's time we showed the universe what our species can achieve together. As if in response, the display showed more entities emerging from the rift. But now, instead of causing panic, the sight brought a sense of purpose. Humanity and the Valkyrian had each mastered different aspects of power. Together, they would redefine what that power meant. The universe was about to learn an important lesson. True strength lies not in the ability to wage war, but in the wisdom to know how to prevent it, and the courage to fight only when prevention fails. Victory's price. The combined human-Valkyrian defense fleet hung in the void like a constellation of purpose-built stars. High Admiral Vexlar, standing on the bridge of the flagship Unity, itself a marvel of merged technologies, watched as the interdimensional rift pulsed with malevolent energy. Status report, he commanded, his scales rippling with the copper sheen of battle readiness. Captain Chen, now his joint fleet commander, stood beside him. The past month had seen the fastest technological integration in either species' history. The entities have destroyed 3 more uninhabited systems, she reported. Their pattern is consistent. They consume all matter in a system, converting it to energy for their expansion. The main display showed the approaching threat, crystalline structures that defied Euclidean geometry, each the size of a small moon. They moved through space like predators, leaving nothing but void in their wake. Combined fleet analysis, Vexlar asked. Valkyrian quantum matrices have successfully merged with our void mirror technology, Chen replied. The fleet's defensive capabilities are at 100%. Offensive systems, she paused, checking a holographic readout, are operational but untested in actual combat. The bridge crew, a mix of humans and Valkyrian, worked with seamless efficiency. What had started as an awkward collaboration had evolved into something extraordinary. Humans' intuitive problem-solving complemented Valkyrian tactical precision. Their differences had become strengths. Multiple entities emerging from the rift, announced the sensor officer, a young Valkyrian whose scales showed the green-blue pattern of focused concentration. They're larger than the previous ones. The display confirmed it. These new beings dwarfed the earlier scouts. Their crystalline forms distorted space itself, creating waves of gravitational disruption that threatened to tear apart the fabric of reality. They're heading directly for the Valkyran colony system of Nextville, Chen observed. Population of 3 billion. Thexlar's scales darkened. Not by chance, I assume. No, Chen agreed. They're learning, adapting. They're targeting populated worlds now, testing our response. The Admiral touched a control, opening a channel to the entire fleet. All vessels, battle formation Delta 7. Activate integrated shields. He turned to Chen. Shall we show them humanity's contribution to Valkyran battle doctrine? Chen's smile was grim but determined. Beginning Phase 1. The fleet moved with impossible precision. Valkyran formations enhanced by human predictive algorithms. As the crystalline entities approached, the first layer of defense activated. Space itself seemed to thicken, the human-designed void mirrors creating a cascade of defensive fields that the entities couldn't simply consume. For the first time since they'd emerged from the rift, the beings slowed. Phase 2, Chen commanded. Valkyran quantum weapons, refined by human targeting systems, lanced out at the entities, where before their attacks had been absorbed. Now they struck with surgical precision at weak points humans had discovered and Valkyran technology could exploit. The largest entity shattered, not into fragments, but into nothingness, its extra-dimensional mass collapsing in on itself. They're responding, the tactical officer announced. Energy spike. A beam of pure chaos erupted from one of the entities, aimed directly at the fleet. But instead of destroying ships, it met something new. A defensive screen born from the combined insights of both species. The beam twisted, turned, and was redirected back at its source. The entity disappeared in a flash of light that rippled through 11 dimensions. They're retreating, Chen observed, but her tone wasn't triumphant. No, they're regrouping. Look at the pattern. Thexlar saw it too. The remaining entities were arranging themselves in a formation that seemed to hurt his eyes to observe. They're not just intelligent, he realized. They're coordinated. All ships, Chen broadcast, prepare for Pattern Omega. This is not a drill. Pattern Omega was theoretical, a battle strategy that required perfect synchronization between human and Valkyran technology. They'd never tested it in actual combat because the power requirements were enormous. The entities struck first, their combined attack turning space itself into a weapon. Reality buckled under the assault. Now, Chen and Thexlar commanded in unison. Every ship in the fleet activated their systems simultaneously. Valkyran quantum drives merged with human void technology, creating something entirely new. A bubble of controlled space-time that existed purely on their terms. Inside this bubble, the laws of physics were theirs to command. The entity's attack didn't just fail, it ceased to exist. Their very presence in this dimension became unstable as the combined fleet exerted its will on local space-time. Send the message, Thexlar ordered. Through the quantum void field, they broadcast in pure mathematics, the only language they were sure the entities would understand. This space is protected. This reality is claimed. Return to your dimension or cease to exist. For a moment that stretched into infinity, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the entities began to retreat, not just from the battle, but from this universe entirely. The rift itself started to close, its edges knitting together as the invaders withdrew. As the last entity vanished, Chen turned to Thexlar. It worked, but the power cost was worth it. He finished. Look. The display showed their fleet. Every ship damaged, energy reserves depleted, crews exhausted. But behind them, visible in the distance, was the Nextville system. 3 billion lives saved not by superior firepower, but by the combined wisdom of two civilizations that had learned to turn their differences into strengths. Send word to both our governments, Thexlar commanded, his scales showing a completely new color pattern, one that represented hope for the future. Tell them that together, we've achieved something unprecedented. We didn't just win a battle. We prove that the strongest defense isn't a weapon at all. It's the willingness of different peoples to stand together, protect each other, and face the unknown not as separate species, but as one unified force. Chen nodded, adding quietly, and perhaps that was the greatest victory of all. As the fleet began its journey home, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter. Humanity and the Valkyrin had not just survived their first true test, they had transformed the very nature of what victory meant. In doing so, they had created something greater than either civilization could have achieved alone. A future where strength came not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to protect, preserve, and grow together. The universe, vast and mysterious, held countless more challenges. But now, at least in this small corner of infinity, two very different peoples had learned the greatest lesson of all, that the ultimate power lies not in conquering others, but in learning to stand with them.